There you go.
With that, I'm going to call the meeting to order. Welcome, everybody. Thank you for attending our city council meeting this evening. It's a regular city council meeting, so the rules of decorum are in effect. If you would please stand for the pledges. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible. Thank you. Please be seated. Okay, city secretary, we do have a quorum this evening with Councilmember Martinez, Councilmember Nance, Councilmember Escobedo, and Stevens in person. And if Councilmember Stone will turn on his camera, then he will be counted as attendance, but not part of the quorum. So we do have a quorum.
Yes.
All right, thank you, Councilmember Stone. Okay, proof of notice of meeting, city secretary.
Thank you, Mayor. Notice of this meeting was posted on August 16th by 2.
Great, thank you. All right, are there any public comments?
There are none.
All right, so we're gonna move on to public hearings. Let me remind everyone that if you're here to speak on one of these items, please come up to the front, give your name, your ward. You'll have 3 minutes to speak, and council cannot respond to you. The city secretary public hearings are beginning at 5:32 p.m. First public hearing to obtain citizen views and comments regarding the second final reading of ordinance 2024-08-01. An ordinance amending Appendix C zoning to the Alpine Code of Ordinances, amending Appendix C zoning to remove the provisions that provide the ability for the city council and the planning and zoning commission to initiate a spot zoning or non-contiguous zoning designation with exceptions, amending the application fee from $250 to $350. Is there anybody here to speak on this? Okay, seeing none, moving to public hearing B. Take citizen views and comments regarding the second final reading of ordinance 2024-08-02 and ordinance memorializing the city ward designations for properties annexed into the city limits of Alpine, providing findings of fact, particular severability, effective date, proper notice, and hearing clauses. Is there anyone here to speak on this? Okay, seeing none, we're going to close public hearings at 5:33 p.m. and move on to public presentations. There are no presentations or recognitions this evening, no proclamations. Community interest items, starting with the mayor. City secretary, please put 1 minute on the timer. Okay, I want to remind you that the Lions fundraiser is Saturday, August 31st, and Sunday, September 1st. And this is their biggest fundraiser of the year. They contribute a lot to our community, and residents overwhelmingly support their efforts in this fundraiser. Also, on August 28th at 5:30 at Spicewood, there will be updates on about conversations about the assisted living and nursing home project that Alpine Community Projects has been working on for over the last year. So that is August 28th, 5:30 at Spicewood. Everybody's welcome to attend. It's going to be conversations about the assisted living. All right, city manager announcements. Okay. Council member announcements. City secretary, please give each council member 1 minute if they so desire to use it. Councilmember Stevens.
Okay, thank you very much, Mayor. Got 5 quick items. Just a reminder, Solid Rock opens up next week. Enrollment's up 23%. And on-site residential, 50 and 100 additional students. That's great news for Solid Rock. Great news for our one of the quick items in terms of my relationship with the city council, commissioner's board perspective. One of the items that has come up, and I'll work with Megan's that comes to dark sky inspection recommendation is we don't charge fees. So basically trying to help people. So if they want to change your license, we expect it. Right. The other item is Commissioners Court is meeting next Tuesday. To do the same thing we're talking about tonight, and that's talking about proposed tax. If they work.
Councilor Smith? Councilor Nance?
A quick update, we had a CAB board meeting today. Having a budget meeting for the CAB on August 6th, Monday, coming Monday. They had 15 total protests this time, much less than last year, and no working for about 2 days. So, that is all moving forward, and we'll know how much we owe CAD, our payment, once they, once we get a budget.
Councilor Martinez?
Just a little announcement that I'm no longer Olivas, they have changed here, but now I'm Martinez.
Right, and Councilmember Stone?
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to reference the Alpine Big Bend gun night. After a little bit of legal research, I have noted that the event violates state law being held on a university campus. And I just want to remind all vendors and possible attendees that if you do show up openly carrying a weapon on a state university campus, for CDL holders, it's a misdemeanor. And for non-CDL holders, it's a third-degree felony. And so we will be looking at, I will be looking at ways to enforce those laws, including an injunction being placed on that event. And so just wanted to give that announcement to all of the folks that are very concerned about that event, which again will be having unlicensed gun sellers and no background checks allowing for guns to be sold to felons. And so we do that event is in limbo, so do stay tuned to it. Thanks again.
For 1 minute. All right, moving on to changes to posted agenda. Item A, are there any items to be continued or withdrawn, council? Councilmember Stone? Okay, any items to be removed from the consent agenda for separate discussion?
I would like to remove item B, for board 2024-0801, amending topographical area 2024 November.
Okay, so we will remove item B. Are there any others? Maybe Councilmember Stone? Okay, moving on to action items to be added to the consent agenda. Are there any items, council? Council Stone? Okay. Time-sensitive items. Any time-sensitive items? Council? Councilmember Stone? All right. So, consent agenda, city secretary.
Thank you, Mayor. Tonight's consent agenda now contains 3 items. Item 1, approval of August 6, 2024 regular meeting minutes. Item 2, approval of the appointment of Judy Stokes to place 1 position on the Animal Advisory Board. And the last item is approved payment July 2024 monthly billing summary for Orchid Law Firm Services.
So move it.
Okay, okay, let's vote. In favor?
Aye.
Councilmember Stone? Aye. Okay. City secretary, items A, B, and C of the consent agenda were approved unanimously by all council members. Okay, now we're moving to items removed from the consent agenda. It was item D. Councilmember Nance.
Okay, I'll, this is just one topographical error that was, instead of the review, probably review every 10 years, that's supposed to be 5 years. That's what I'll approve. And if Gio will speak a little bit about some of the other amendments, I believe, before that's almost running the election. So, you know, clarify that. The amendments are actually elected.
Sure, thank you, Councilman. So, essentially, we had to amend our order of elections because we worked with the county and, we did find that elections that have to be conducted jointly. So in this instance, in November, we're actually going to be able to be on the same valid to all the other measures. And in doing that, we have to amend quite a few things on the order, such as the precincts, the location of the precincts. And then we would be naming Warren Islam the early voting. That's the role that I usually have, but she'll need that authority in our election in order to conduct our election. I'll still be working closely with her, but she'll be the actual designated early voting clerk, and we'll have an updated contract.
That's what I expressed to approve your
Yes, that's
in the discussion, council.
So I have a question about the mechanics. And voter registration card. There are 9 blocks. When it comes to us voting, where will we vote? Will we vote under city, county? How's it still work?
you would vote in your precinct. So early voting is all going to be conducted at the main location, the Judge Valtier complex, office complex. And so that's going to be that roughly 2-week period listed in the order. And then on election day, you would actually vote in the precinct. So the precincts available for city works would be 1, 2, 4, 8. And if anybody wants to know where they can vote on election day, they can contact me or the voter registrar and be happy to direct them. But it's going to be, it's quite complex because in precinct 1, for example, you have ward 1, 2, 5, 3, things of that. We have the list, so if they contact us on election day, they would vote at the precinct location. Otherwise, during the voting period, like I said, roughly 2 weeks, they could vote.
Did all that, except precinct is not listed anywhere. Sure.
So this one would be. I would think it would likely be the JP, but we would need to contact the voting.
It's commission seal.
Okay, so it's the commission.
The reason I raise it, in my opinion, we have to be specific of where people are going to vote. Because this is going to be their reference. You tell them precinct, say, where the hell am I? So
Well, we have the list.
Well, I know my mom and I are in 2 different precincts, even though we're both in Ward 5. So when we vote, I have to take it on one precinct and a different precinct, and when you show up with the voter registration precincts and you show them this card, they don't get it. So we're spending a lot of time talking about wards, districts, commissions, whatever. I know you're stuck with it, but let's work with Lauren and we'll work this and get our cards properly updated, or we use the right language.
Okay, yeah, we'll have the information available on the site.
I don't think that's sufficient. This is the card everyone gets at home. This is the.
Well, I
one.
can contact her and see if it's an option to send new cards, but I'm not sure if it's, I'd be happy to contact her and ask her.
Never done this. So you want to get it ready? Anyway, thank you.
You're welcome.
Can I raise a point of interest in this? Am I allowed? Not technically doing this, but could be. Any other comments? Okay, so, I need a motion to approve 2024-08-01 in amended order. Okay, I need a second. Let's vote.
Aye.
Councilmember Stone? Okay, City Secretary, the order 2024-08-01 as amended has been approved unanimously by City Council. All right. Okay, so moving on to reports and presentations. 6 minutes on the clock, City Secretary, and the first item is yours.
All right, thank you. So essentially, as you well know, our office did launch some reports and presentations recently. And that was going to be in alignment with what the council goals that they tasked me with for this year. The reports just go over legislative services, council activities, board and commission appointments, And, I definitely welcome feedback that you all have. If you'd like to see any additional information on there, or if you think it's too much, certain reports. But I basically went, I took everything and I kind of measured where we're at statistic wise. I can give a brief overview. Under general legislative services, the council approved one ordinance, bringing the city to a total of 12 approved ordinances this fiscal year out of 23. Y'all approved 2 resolutions, bringing that to a total of 28 approved resolutions out of 29 proposed resolutions for the fiscal year. And then you all approved 1 short-term rental special use permit, which brought that total to 20. So in terms of transparency, we did conduct 4 public hearings in July, bringing that total to 55 for the whole year. Then 37 letters to property owners, bringing that total to 605 for the full year, or year so far. And then we continue to receive, a steady rate of public information requests. We actually received the most, after this month, we've received the most in the last 6 years. We've already surpassed, all that we've done last year. As far as boards, commissions, we did, all of them met in July with the exception of the Building Standards Commission, who have not met this year yet. And the council did make 3 board appointments in July. Additionally, the chair of the Animal Advisory Board. Other than that, my office was featured on City Talk and talked about the updated reports, updated transparency efforts, and all this stuff. Y'all have any feedback or things you'd like to see added or did?
Councilmember Stevens?
This is really helpful. I don't understand. How ordinances.
Yeah, I can look at that.
The only thing I had was, I think it's a good review for us as council to look at the accomplishments of the last month. And then, I enjoy seeing like park board knowing, show positions for park board on 1 and 4. So you guys know you can about this, advisory board's always kind of meeting forms, one of those 6 forms.
That's for parks. Councilmember Martinez?
On the letters that you sent, they said that 605 letters. Wow.
Yes, it's October.
That these letters, there were unequal or
No, but we can probably work on that. We have somebody in-house that's very efficient at getting those translations done, and we can just print an additional page on the backside and print it.
Councilmember Stowe?
Thank you, Mayor. It's difficult to hear y'all, so I'm glad I'm getting to see it from this side, but I will try to chime in as best as I can. I think I heard things about translating and I'm all for it, but appreciate the time to get to speak as well.
Okay, moving on to information or discussion items. Okay, after feedback from residents, people in attendance and on Zoom from the last previous meetings, and also from some council members and city administration, we're gonna do something different here so that we can keep the city of the business of the city moving along quickly, efficiently, and being respectful of everyone's time. We don't want our residents to become disenfranchised with watching our meetings, attending our meetings when they drone on and say the same things over and over again. Each council person will have 3 minutes to speak. Joe will keep the time. After everyone has spoken, then there will be 2 additional minutes to have something to add. So gather your thoughts, organize them so that you can say them succinctly and efficiently. We're going to do that for the information and discussion items and also the action items. This is not unique to Alpine. Many cities that first spoke to administration across the state of Texas force this time as well. So with that being said, let's move on to discussion regarding the information of a Chamber of Commerce And tonight I have invited Philip Carey to come and to speak, and whoever else is here to speak with you. If you would please come to the podium and state your name and.
Thank you. Now,
Get their support.
we've all spoke, at least individually with most everybody. There's been a lot of talk about economic development in the city. And I think that's a great thing to do. And I think economic development will never be successful unless we can support the businesses that already exist. And, typically that's done through a chamber of commerce. We've talked with various, business people in town, overwhelmingly positive that they would like to see more support for a chamber in various avenues. One being, being able to just have a list of what is offered here. What is offered if somebody needs, say, a concrete contractor. That's similar to, you'll ever look at like the Chamber of Commerce in Fort Davis, of all of their businesses listed. But we really just need support for the businesses that continue to support our community. And, we continue to see businesses go under. There's not very many businesses coming in. So no, that's more economic development, but we need to have an entity that supports the businesses in town like we have, that supports the tourism. And I think we have a great visitor center. I think they do a great job. And what could we do with our businesses if we had a similar entity that could do that for our business? And,
Yeah, and I'll just be very, very brief. Everything that he's talking about is well known by all of us. There's a problem, and that's the lack of a collective when it comes to economic development and business entities coming together, right? So how are we going to address that? So we can ask for support, and even if we don't get it, as a collective community, from my personal standpoint, and a lot of the other business members that I work with within the community, we'd have to start it organically ourselves. But we want to give the city an opportunity to actually reach out and become part of this force that we have.
All right, Councilmember Martinez, 3 minutes on the clock. If you have anything you would like to ask.
Well, I think it's a great idea. We've been talking with several associations working together. I'm a former Chamber of Commerce board member, and so it's very helpful. I've been talking to several business owners, and they felt like when we have a small Main Street or downtown association, they didn't feel included. They say you're just concentrating downtown. And all these businesses who they are not in downtown, they feel, well, it's good, we're not important for them. So I think that Chamber of Commerce will represent all businesses in the community. And it worked before. I don't really know what happened or what was the process of bring out more information about it. But I think it's a great idea to start again, the Chamber of Commerce. I've been talking with other city council members that they have Chamber of Commerce, they will let us have their guidelines so we can have something to start with. But the main thing is we need somebody who committed to start this, because we're talking for I don't know how long and nothing has been done. So we need somebody to commit to say, okay, let's do it. I will leave this, and which is also good.
Councilmember Nance, 3 minutes on the clock.
I guess the first 30 seconds here real quick, and just ask, I don't really agree with the limiting of time on this, because we went from chapter 23, didn't we know the rules of procedure and everything with city council? I know our meetings can go on a little long and everything else, but I mean.
Okay, point of order. We're on discussion item A.
Coming back into that one, I would actually say, I think it's great that we're actually taking economic development from a lot of different angles. I think it's going to be extremely important to support those local businesses in that regard. You can see on the other side, and we've had meetings about getting all horses pulling the cart in the same direction, which I think that's when we'll really start to see things. I'll be really interested in how the city can work with this as well, in ways and the means that they can support the resources, labor.
Councilmember Escobedo, 3 minutes on the clock.
I definitely do think that we should accomplish. I worked for the Chamber of Commerce for 2 years. And I think that economic development ministry and, the ambassadors, all of them were all, they would all work together. A lot of the organizations like the Rotary Club, they all came together. And, the main point was helping the businesses, bringing more businesses in, or making their businesses better. Putting people in their businesses. There was many little things that I remember we used to do, including events. That was that big factor in like Cinco de Mayo was huge. Soros was involved. We got a high school involved, and so bringing all these people together is good. And we do is really.
Councilmember Stevens, 3 minutes on the clock.
Probably a couple of others. So
Glenn, that's where we're at.
so that's number one. I fully support it. The leader. Leaders like to go on and just say, I'm gonna pull the people together and say, actually. Second piece of information is, I've kept the chamber alive. I actually, worked the state of Texas, paid $2,000 to pay all of the fees and arrears to the state. And I've got the documentation filed in 1043 because the federal government, it is the fund as of 4 years. So I think it's the right thing to go do, but we gotta get some leaders in place. I haven't, someone's got to spend it. So I think once that happens, I have to support that as a member of council, because I don't believe city council should be part of the change. This is a business. Oh, no, that's the business is happening.
Councilmember Stone, 3 minutes on the clock.
Thank you, Mayor. Can our speakers repeat who they are? I can't see them.
It's Philip Carey and Conley Razor.
Awesome. Thank you for being here this evening. Appreciate y'all and your work surrounding this. I think the biggest thing that I see of concern, noting that I've been an executive director of a Chamber of Commerce in the Tri-County region, is funding. And so I look forward to seeing y'all's plans. And if you have anything to share tonight on that, that'd be spectacular. Just regarding is typically you need, 40, 50,000 bucks to pay someone to be there all day. If not, maybe a part-time, could be 15 to 20,000 perhaps on a low ball. And so to see that, we need to have, somewhere around 100 businesses paying upwards of $200 to $300 a year just to have a part-time person. Is that what y'all are envisioning, or where is the funding to be able to do this in your minds coming from?
Well, obviously there's enough interest in town. I think we can get this pay dues. Once we can get it off the ground, there is a little seed money from the previous account that would be available to us, the amount of about $18,000. So, to get it started, it would probably be by a part-time contract, labor type deal, and typically once it gets off the ground, most chambers are funded in part by dues and hotel motel tax. And once we get off the ground and be able to show the value that the chamber can provide to the town, that would probably be a route that you take.
Sure.
It would be a contract labor type deal. We just got to find the right person to do it.
Yeah, that makes sense. And to note, in doing that, I know Fort Davis or Jeff Davis County, they provided up to 90% of the funding out of hot taxes. I'm not sure if Alpine is set up in the same way that it can do that. So that'll definitely be something you'll have to sit down. And I'm not sure that, the appetite here in town is looking to, spend upwards of 90% of y'all's budget or fund that. but I definitely look forward to seeing some plans, and a lot of it is block walking. I remember that from my day. We raised our membership from 40 members to over 100 for the first time in a decade when I joined as executive director, and that was walking around and getting to know people. And so I'm hoping that we can maybe even see a letter of support from maybe some substantial number of businesses. That might be a good place to start in doing that too. But again, appreciate y'all bringing this up. And I have a report of inquiry for our parliamentarian. Excuse me.
That's time.
A point of inquiry for the parliamentarian.
Yes.
And that is Gio, City Secretary, excuse me, is this 3-minute rule, is this something that we've enacted or voted on, or is this just a suggestion?
So the mayor does run the meeting, so she can implement reasonable rules. They are subject to appeal by the city council. So by majority vote, the council can overrule that decision.
Okay, I propose I guess I'm proposing a nullification or recess of the rule of 3 minutes at this time. Is there a second?
Second,
Okay, discussion?
my discussion is that we're about to discuss the property tax rate, raise values capital. We're gonna solve that.
I'm ready to vote when y'all are.
We have, if you will, some of these conversations can be a lot more large and long, so I just don't understand. We can always, I believe, this call question as well, in order to, curtail conversation. So maybe that is something.
Councilmember Martinez?
Oh, I mean, I agree with the timing because we can prepare with all that we already have a question. We should be enough time in 2 minutes to ask questions and get the respondents, and that will be help all of us will have a short meeting because like all of us work, we have tired to work and have long meetings, just talking about the same over and over and over. And so I agree with it.
Councilmember Escobedo?
I agree with most of our leaders. I mean, if we do need to extend certain for.
Councilmember Stevens?
Well, use balance, well, of course, that's. Very understood for part of this. I have a number of questions and there's no one. So I don't. So I don't questions you can ask.
Well, my point, I agree with Councilmember Escobedo, Councilmember Martinez, that for items such as that, we extend the time. All right, let's vote in favor of. Let's see. In favor of the rule.
It's in favor of nullifying the rule, to clarify.
Let parliamentarian speak. Okay,
I have it down as to remove the 3-minute time limit. Rule
to remove that. So if you're in favor of not having a time limit, vote yes.
No.
Okay, Councilmember Stowe.
In favor of nullifying the 3-minute time limit.
Okay, so City Secretary, the 3-minute time limit is nullified. All right, so moving on to discussion item B. Discuss the property tax rate and appraised value, tax roll, city manager.
So after some long discussions, sit down conversations and preparation, the Bridger County Appraisal District provided another draft copy, which is provided in the council packet as of August 9th. I believe it was printed on August 8th. This is the most current that we had access to in order to set our tax rate. The reason we decided to go with this one is it did change our values not in protest to 513,615,432, reducing our total values in protest to 11,371,624. The application in which to submit and fill out for our proposed tax rate is 10 pages long. It is a systematic process of addition and subtraction based on the current 2023 values as of the date we requested them, which was July 26th. And then plugging in all of the additional information that is outlined for each of the 40+ steps, 81 steps. As a result, we plugged in everything, including what is currently under protest that is taken into consideration as part of the formula of determining the tax rate. I also do want to point out that in 1988, the council did approve to utilize a portion of our sales tax to reduce our property tax rate. So when you look at the different options available in which to set our tax rate, we are required to utilize the one that reduces our property tax rate for our sales tax. So currently, based on the information provided, the no new revenue rate is set at 0.422705. The voter approval tax rate is set at 0.498208, and the de minimis rate is set at 0.499822. If you recall in previous discussions, the de minimis rate is the rate set to bring in an additional $500,000. And then the voter approval is the highest you can go to in regards to not having to go out for an election. I do want to bring it to everyone's attention that almost everyone within our surrounding area is going to give voter session the county that was session Martha as well. So that seems to be the trend within our area. I also included a tax rate information. This is just a simple spreadsheet that we keep track of our tax rate from year to year to year. I do want to point out at the top, it provides you the tax base, what's under protest, and our new property values, as well as the 23 tax base. 23 tax base, what we utilized to come up with last year's figures. It shows the 2023-24 current tax rate of 0.47554. And then there's a comparison for the no new revenue, which means it would be the same rate to bring in roughly the same amount. You'll notice it does not bring in the exact same amount. It's about $72,000 lower. The de minimis rate, the voter approval rate, and then you have the breakdown of the no new revenue with the slight increases from 0.25, 0.5, 1%, 2%, 3%, 3.25%, and 2.5%. Not exceeding 3.5 without going out for election. And then it brings in what you would bring in. The biggest thing I do want to point out to council when we talk about debt hurts us when we have no debt. What I mean by that is it really looks odd. We are only looking at collecting for the general fund. Our debt is tied to 2 different funds. We are looking at bringing in $51,400. So the current debt rate, in order to collect the debt required to make next year's payments out of the general fund, which is for property tax side, we're looking at a rate of 0.010198. That is probably one of the lowest debt rates sites. We are looking at a collection rate of about 96%. We did decrease our collection rate this year. If that has been across the board with most of the areas, including the county. All of the information provided to you does come out of the 2024 tax rate calculation worksheet. The tax appraiser, the tax collector, Sylvia Vega, is the one who certifies off on this after we battle it out between each other and all the numbers to make sure that we're in agreement. And so she has signed off on it, and it will become an item on our website. All of the information for the tax rate, it does up for conversation now for council in the direction you want to go. The budget, just so you understand, does tie to the tax rate to a point, but the tax rate, the budget has to be approved before the tax rate. So whatever you decide, may or may not reflect the
Councilmember Martinez. Councilmember Escobedo. Councilmember Nance.
It's, so if we put with the 3.5%, I'm seeing total raise 84,747, about 85,000. That's with the E&O and the interest.
So that's the additional combined.
So even if we raise property taxes, tax allowed 3.5. Okay. And when we look at the budget, we are balancing off reserves.
Yes, so currently the general fund is utilizing additional from the capital improvement fund to cover the addition of the $200,000 exit off of the.
And we have reserves because you run a tight budget. It's not that we actually budget, you over budget, or we always pad some things for just in case, but it seems like we consistently have money left over to kind of put back towards debt fund balances and things like that.
Unfortunately, I say unfortunately because I don't want that to become the norm for the city. We have always underrun our budgets because we have either not had enough staff, we haven't completed the projects that we've allocated within the funds, or we haven't made the capital improvements. So every year, I hope that we actually go over budget because you're seeing more coming out of it. But you're correct, every year we have under.
And even on streets, the 200,000 loader, we can purchase these capital assets if you do run a tighter budget. Correct. If I were to state, my mind is that currently last year, and I think the history of that is important. Previously, when we had 3 years of no revenue, and then we had a 2% maybe or something like that, and then 3.5 last year, and 3. And I'll request 3.5 this year.
So last year we went with the
2.7.
right under the voter.
Instead of 3.5. The previous it was 2 something.
Over the.
We had no net revenue for 3 years, 2%, 3.5. Saying that, this is all relatively recent from the tax side of things. We used to be able to, the max was 8% back in the day. 8% for 70,000 plus. You're nowhere close to that.
put all of the paperwork together, so maybe we don't have to have an additional.
Okay, 3.5, sounds like something I want her to recommend.
Don't go,
Okay.
we're just,
Okay, yeah, this is not an item to vote on. Okay. And that brings in, you said an additional 85 something thousand approximately.
84,747.
So that makes sense.
One thing I was gonna mention, just real quick, sorry, was, just looking at my house, which they appraised around 250 after exemptions and everything. So if you have a standard $250,000 house, I was paying about 1,149 last year to the city in taxes. With the new 3.5% increase, it would be so about $45 decrease to the city. And that's me. I mean, other people's property and mine did go up to 10%, max allowed by the CAD. But commercial properties may see increases and everything else like that. We're really just divvying up the tax burden.
and for those of you who have access to the council packet, there's a lot of good information and it is available online. I do want to point out that the CAD does have the average taxable home for the city of Alpine at $175,697. That's the average. The market value is at about $200,904. The spreadsheet that breaks this down is only at 100,000. So 100,000 kind of an easier number to run with when you're looking at numbers. And I think that it's valuable information when you look at it because, you know, the city does offer certain levels of exemptions. And we do have a big chunk of our income not coming off of residential, but coming off of the commercial properties.
All right, Councilmember Stone.
Appreciate the time. Thank you all. Megan, this is awesome info. Thank you for putting this together. I will probably be reaching out to you just to ask for some baseline numbers, but I'm gathering as much as I can here. I'm not an expert by any means. My feeling, though, is, you know, we're going to, kind of as last meeting we spoke, Councilmember Nance spoke, you know, is it worth raising the tax for, you know, X number of dollars? And ultimately, just like you noted, we're going to have to pass a budget before doing this. And so looking at that, really seeing where our priorities are, if we have so little debt, is that something we need to do to be able to make sure that we are doing the priorities that our constituents and the residents of Alpine are asking us to do? So I really want to be ambitious this year and looking at our wastewater facility and seeing, you know, being able to get that up to par, looking at purple line pipes coming back into town, being able to do further water improvements, including perhaps a major rehaul or planning for that over the next few years. I'd like us to really be able to push that forward. And I think even if we're able to raise a few $100,000 extra dollars and then start looking at options of low debt, low interest debt or other types of grants, including that big packet of water infrastructure money that was passed at the last legislature. I'm looking forward to doing that with this council and hopefully not putting a big burden on our residents, but also being able to talk to folks and give them the straight businesses that the infrastructure, as they know, is not up to par, and we're going to have to be brave to take on some of these issues. So again, thank you for the time to be able to talk through that.
All right, moving on to discussion item C, discussion regarding the fiscal year 2024-2025 budget. City manager.
As mentioned prior, I am going to start changing the budget process. So this will be the last budget for the council under this process. The proposed budget that is included in the council packet and is available online is balanced. It is balanced using the fund position or reserve accounts. We continued in this budget to focus on the major priorities set by council and the public, which is infrastructure and personnel. As you'll know, the tax rate is not included within the budget, so that will tweak it a little bit for the next meeting. And we do anticipate an increase, except for when I put this together, then the market crashed. But we do anticipate an increase in revenue for the interest on all bank accounts. I do want the council to understand that when I do look at the budget and finances in general for the city, I am conservative. I don't add more than what I think we need. I always prefer to go over in our revenue than to go under. So you'll see that my numbers don't match what our predicted year ends are. They're slightly under, just to be prepared. Included within this budget is also some recommended increases that will be presented later on this evening for action. Is the utility fees, to include updating and increasing our new tap fees, residential sewer rate. Also included in here is the increases in all departments for personnel expenses. This includes salaries, overtime, retirement, and insurance. When we discussed the employee compensation plan and the budget last time, one of the items I brought up was the budget is based on actual. So this year's budget had an estimated amount for increase for all the employees. With the turnover, not everyone's gotten their merit. I didn't want to add on top of what was budgeted. So I went back and did an actual versus what we're projecting for next year. So you'll see the difference in the personnel expenses there. Also included within this budget are several new positions, including a records clerk for the office of the city secretary, an economic development manager, a new police officer, another position for the public works street department, and then another gas utility worker. When we look at the public works department, Eddie would love to have a team of 100 employees to be able to maintain all of our streets. And working with Eddie and the compromise, it was every year let's add one. 2 years ago, we added multiple positions and we did not fill them. I'd rather add 1 or 2 positions at the time and fill them and keep them filled instead of having a budget with a bunch of open positions that we may not fill. I don't think that's appropriate. The gas utility worker and working with Randy Guzman, our utility director for the gas department. He is one of our smallest departments that services 2 cities or towns. The gas department not only services the city of Alpine, but they also service Fort Davis. So he's requested an additional position. He does foresee some of his employees retiring soon. And so we'd like to get someone in and get them developed and trained. You'll also notice within this budget, there is a transfer of a position from the finance to human resource. The more and more that we've developed and looked at the human resource, it needs to be a department. Human resource is not just one task or one aspect of our city. It not only involves our hiring and termination of employees, it also handles all of our benefits. It also handles all of our workman's comp issues. It handles the day-to-day complaints. It is more than a full-time position, and transferring the individual currently who manages payroll, which ties very closely to human resource, will not only provide additional support for our current human resource coordinator, but provide an extra assistance for our community and our employees as a whole. In 2017, the city utilized Enterprise Fleet Program to update our very, very old fleet. As a result, over the past several years, we've slowly been replacing vehicles with leased vehicles. This budget does include 9 replacements. Just like everything else that Councilor Nance pointed out, things are increasing in cost. So there is a slight increase in our leased vehicle budgets. It does not include any new additional replacements of some of our older fleet. It is just replacing those that our leases have been extended past their original dates. With having the leased vehicle, I know that there's pros and cons. For the city employees, it is a nice benefit to understand and have that ability to get from A to B without breaking down. That was a big issue in the past, and now they have that ability. They also have the ability to not have to worry about utilizing a personal vehicle to go to out-of-town training. They can utilize one of those vehicles. And it's also nice to know that when our city employees are out there, they're representing the city in well-maintained vehicles. Heavy equipment is a big one within this budget. You'll notice that there is a $200,000 voter within the Public Works Department. We budgeted a backhoe in the water department, and we budgeted a skid steer within the wastewater. Also with included are multiple projects. Water line replacement in Sunny Glen area. I'm pretty sure all of you have seen the Facebook posting, the continued kind of drama of what's going on out there. Our team is not equipped to go out there and replace the line as a whole. And so after discussing it with the current interim utility director, it was thought that it would be best to contract this out. so that we could bring someone in to come and dig up the whole line and replace it. So that not only would it minimize the impact of the water leaks, but then it would be securely buried. Currently, it's buried, not buried, buried, not buried, buried. It kind of comes in and out of the ground. Also included is a continuation of the wastewater treatment plant improvements. Although council did approve it for this year's budget, and it is a discussion item for the next agenda. We did just go out for the request for proposal for the clarifier 1 and drying beds. We got 2 proposals. We had about 17 people actually sign up to respond. 2 responded. Super excited considering we are a small community. It is budgeted again in there. So when I say that the budget is balanced, utilizing fund balance and net positions or reserves, that money out of the reserve account has been tied up specifically by council for this project, specifically the wastewater treatment plant. So that money is also included. The gas department is still working towards smart meter replacement. We've had some issues with some procurement information to be able to include, so we haven't gone out for that RFP. But it is continued to be within their budget. And then of course, the facility needs. The item that is not in the budget that will be a separate item for discussion next fiscal year is the continued improvements to the visitor center. Currently, they have $470,000 in capital improvements that they requested. I thought that should be a separate conversation altogether, and it should not be included. It really is a capital improvement. There is money in fund balance that can be utilized for that, but it should be a separate item. What you find within your packet is the proposed budget with all of the information. The spreadsheets that are involved does provide you a projected year end. This is as of June 30th. Typically, we do this as of March, which gives you a halfway mark. The past 2 years, we've done it as of June 30th to give you a 9-month period. I do want to take into consideration when you're looking at the Public Works Department, they barely dove into their paving this month. They were doing a lot of training with material they already had within their possession. So their expenses aren't going to reflect the projected year into what it will become. Any questions, thoughts, comments? I do want to make it clear that when you look at the budget, you have to look at each fund separately. Property tax does not fund water, wastewater, sanitation, airport, hotel. Property tax just funds the general fund. When you look at the water and the wastewater, it is funded by the fees that we collect from the residents and the vendors who utilize some of our other services. The airport, 99% of theirs does come from the fuel sales out of the airport, and then a very small percentage comes from the land of the neighbors. The hotel tourism obviously is collected from the hotel tax. So last year we did utilize the fund balance to continue. We have not utilized it so far this year because we're not on board with some of the capital improvement projects that we're discussing for next year. Of course, there is the INS fund in here as well, where we're looking at bringing in $51,400 for property tax. It does also provide the breakdown with the CIP, which council has already provided or approved. I'm sorry. It does provide a projected year end. It does look at the projected year end for all of our reserves and fund balances. It also provides a projected 3-year trend. As I mentioned at the beginning of this, I do look at things conservatively. I guess maybe a little part of me is hopeful that we won't have a huge influx like we had with the pandemic. It does address the capital improvement projects and outlines them within the budget. It does provide a budget summary comparing last year to this year. A wealth of information.
All right, Councilmember Stevens.
Oh, okay. I've got a whole bunch of things. One is probably of interest to all of us. That is scheduled to get from here to September 17th. And then we have 2 more city council meetings. We have first read the tax rate, the full tax rate, and the budget. And I'm just trying to look at my calendar to help us understand how you see the schedule going forward.
So for the September 3rd meeting, it will be the first reading of the tax rate, based on some of our discussion. And then it could also tentatively be the first reading of the budget. We can have the readings within the 6-5 period. I do think that we will probably separate it with the first reading of the tax rate on September 3rd, and then have a call meeting so that we can discuss the budget as well. And then we can have the first or the second reading for both on the September 17th meeting, as long as the tax rate is approved, as long as the budget is approved before the approval of the tax rate.
So can we collectively kind of set that tentative additional now is I'm watching you see on the 11th, 12th, and something else. Sure. So for the 3rd, the 10th, and 17th, I'm okay with that. I just want to make sure it's going to be that simple.
Is everyone okay with looking at the 10th? It'll be Tuesday.
Yes. So when you say call meeting, doesn't mean, open meeting.
It's an extra meeting outside our regular schedule. Eva, we had like.
Just-
So this I was half of the game.
So Tuesday, September 10th, is that good for you? Good for you? Good for you, Councilman Stowe?
I'll make it work. Yes.
Okay, good. Thank you. That's, thank you. I'm kind of going through my list of things you just sent out. And conclusions to the next. You said that the projections are listed in here. And are they in the details? Because when I look at while we adapted the 2023-24 budget 17.1, we actually amended that to be 16.8.
So yes, if I'm sorry to interrupt, would you like me to kind of run it down so everyone?
That's great, yeah.
So there's two different sets of projections. There's the 3-year trend, and then there's the projected year end for the fiscal year. So when you look at each of the different departments, they're each provided a different spreadsheet. You have the account number, the account title, you have the actual expenses as of 22 and as of 23. You have the original budget, which is what council approved for fiscal year 24, and then the current budget. The current budget is all of the amendments that were made either by council or within the department. Then you have the actual experience as of June 30th, 2024. So this is everything that was expended or brought in revenue wise as of June 30th, 2024. And then you have the projected year. The projected year end is a formula utilized to project the year end based off of a 9-month expenditure for a 12-month year. On occasion, it won't differ, like our debt payments. They are what they are. They're not going to be expected to go up or down. What's actually budgeted. And then you have the proposed actual 2025. So when you're looking at the budget, the projected year end is based off of the current year's budget. So when you're looking at the summary, because the council actually approved the budget, it's what was actually adopted, not what was. And then the proposed summary is, obviously it is an increase over what was adopted last year based on some of the larger capital improvements that we're putting in. And we did have an increase in property values. And then also the 3-year trend. So the 3-year trend is off of the adopted 2023-24 budget with the proposed 24. And that one is a formula as well. It's based off of a 5% increase on expenses and a 3% on revenues. I don't know if I answered this question. Councilmember Stevens.
Yeah, so that starts, so thank you, that's helpful. I'm a guy who looks and says, so what do we expect to spend? In order for me to go through and get a perspective on the budget, sounds like what I need to do is take each of your spreadsheets, put them together, and come up with a projection. Do you have a handy way to help me not have to do that?
So page 102 in the council packet has the estimated fund balance that shows an underspend of $823,704.
That's against roughly 16.8. Okay, that's very helpful. Thank you.
So, but I do want to I need asterisks.
Yeah,
It doesn't include all of the paving that's about to hit.
Oh, I don't know, that's,
So
and
I
that's,
think about $200.
oh, that's okay, but, so that's very helpful. So you expect to be in the 16.2. Hence, how you've allocated money out as a vendor at 16.8. That's a relative number. And so your 17.2, going back to Darren's comment, you do a great job managing. I never worry about the city, how it's gonna come out. I'm just trying to understand how you see it. And second, where would I find? Well, under proposed budget, so you propose revenue at the war tax, $2.1 million. If we follow what we just said a few minutes ago on the other item, it's gonna be closer to 2.2.
Yes, and then you'll see the 288,000 from the capital improvements for the street department decrease
Gotcha.
to cover.
I'm with you there, thank you. Cause that's what they have wrong. Where would I find, on the expenditure side, and again, I'm looking at page 95, fire department. I know we allocated 40 this year. I know the county is looking at doing 50. I don't know if you and Greg have talked about that or not, but they're looking to see if we can put 50 in. And I'm not looking for an answer now. I'm just asking where you're at.
I do have an answer. You'd find that item under Department 620, which is on page 106. It's non-departmental,
Okay.
and there's a Alpine Emergency Services Board for 40,000. When I initially discussed this with Greg Pennington, it was unfortunate series of events. We did lose the chair, Paul Leffler.
Yeah.
We had never received a financial report from the board. I did not think it was appropriate for council to add additional money at this time until we really understood the finances of the board.
Okay.
I do want to put that the council can at any time next year,
Amen.
amend and
Good.
put additional money towards it. And we do still have money that has been set aside specifically for the fire department that can be reallocated for anything, or it could be part of what we contribute.
Super, and just to follow up on that, so the judge and I did talk about that. I said, we're blind at city council. You know, and not as a throwing a rock, it's just, we're not seeing data. So one of the things I'm gonna do and work with commissioners for is make sure we get information out of AES. So we know what they're spending, how it's being allocated, so we can make an informed decision. And Greg said, by all means, in fact, I said, you know, the more we can do that, the more the transparency we have, the better off we are.
I was hoping that was gonna be part of the update from Paul when he did make the
Yeah.
first presentation,
Yeah.
and
Yeah, so,
unfortunately, it didn't happen and he did pass away. I know that Ms. Wood is the current treasurer, and we are looking at scheduling. You have access to, not all of the calendars for the upcoming year.
Yep.
But we are looking at doing a master scheduling of all of our nonprofits that we do assist with,
Good.
as well as any other information that needs to be.
good, so anyway, so I'll push that also on the commissioner's court, it'll come over and I think that'll work nicely. Continuing on my tabs.
Since I'm under that department, I do want to put a side note, so that council fully understands the ambulance subsidy has not increased, nor have they requested it increase. And the contract does end next fiscal year. So that
Yes.
is something that will have to be taken into consideration. It is at the current contracted rate. Once again, there is that fire reserve set aside that can be utilized to make up any difference if needed. But it is in the current budget proposed for the exact rate of the current.
And that is another topic of Dr. Well. The measurements and performance and how's that going? And how does the county see it? And how should we as council see it so we can have a discussion? Because I've heard lots of dialogue back and forth. It's great, it's lousy. And when you reach out and talk to Merchant, hey, what are you hearing? Well, we're not hearing much of anything. Okay, fine. So we need to have that dialogue and be prepared to get that on. Thank you.
All right, Councilmember Nance.
Mr. Stevens has a lot of ones that I think are important, so mine should be relatively short. So the two positions, the records clerk and economic development. The other positions, the police officers and everything else, I think those will already align and there's probably our job descriptions and everything else for those, gas department and police department. I think it'll be really important to kind of provide goals and stuff for the records clerk and the economic development person, just so we see the value of doing that.
So we currently do have the record clerk position, and then adding an additional one to that, the office of the city secretary. The economic development, the job description would have to be approved by council. And that would happen either sometime second meeting in September or early October. If the council, the thing, we want to approve the budget and then kind of have the job.
Being interested if that dovetails into the chamber or anything else like that. I did not see finance director or utility director, which you said are both needed.
They're already included within the salaries. So they're not, none of the directors are singled out within the other departments. So their salaries are still included. They have not been. I am. I don't want to go
One more, the, two more. One is the 17 million budget that we did last year. A large part of that was capital improvements, I think 1.4 million, and then maybe this year 1.5, 1.5. Is that ARPA?
So the 1.4 is ARPA for the wastewater treatment plant. The rest of it was a lot of the reserve accounts and fund balance for all of the ongoing projects, including the hotel motel, about 300,000+.
Explain our,
American Rescue Act.
thank you.
That was money set aside by the president.
Yeah.
In 2020, we received it in 2 different portions, and it automatically went into a reserve account. It has not been utilized for anything else, and the president and the government is very specific.
Page 91, no risk. I really like that. Whatever else that should give us. That, because that tells us where we really need to put some money towards those items, mitigate those risks. Structure, I think that's super important. Cybersecurity, I think updating the IT is going to be important. And then the economic development. So listing those risks, I think is a good thing that ties the budget towards that. The 823,000 overage, which you said some of that's going to get removed for updating stuff. So see that, and I did see that you had the streets here, the goal for next year. So in the fall, we'll do a audit or study of the streets that have, it's kind of this KSA study that's improvements to us. Can you speak a little bit to that, what that's gonna look like and what the street improvements will look like over there?
Actually, I'm gonna go into a little bit more detail than you probably need. For the first time in my tenure with the city of Alpine, we're going to have a leadership planning meeting. Where all of the leaders, I call them my leaders, the directors get together. We're gonna kind of look at all of the things we want to look at for the entire year, including the projects, the ordinances that are necessary, not only to help you, but to help their position. One of the things that has already been tasked to the Public Works Department is to utilize their new assistant director to take the street study and to go through and update it and revisit what KSA has put together in regards to the condition of each of the blocks. I am hated in my neighborhood because everything is my block, and it is considered one of the worst in the city. But having another set of clean eyes look at it besides Eddie and myself, because drive around, we know them, and to go through and kind of rate, this is good. So we did still pave that one. Jared did repave that one or rebuild it, get that all updated. The deadline for completion of that has been set for the end of September. After that, Eddie and his team and I will sit down and kind of come up with a spreadsheet, PowerPoint presentation, something for council, and then we're gonna schedule a workshop. We have already started scheduling workshops for this next fiscal year. One will be the street, one will be water. I've got a finance team coming to help explain debt, how we can fund the projects that we're looking at. And so we will have a sit down conversation in regards to the streets and moving forward. I know Eddie would like assistance having the third party actually build them while he's speaking. As he builds his team up, that will also give him the ability to do more with what.
Last thing I was gonna do is you're bored on the weekend. I would say the best part of this is reading the 19 pages that Megan puts together. That is a complete overview of the budget. It doesn't get into the numbers. It doesn't deal with any of that. It talks about where we fiscal year at, where those dollars are going to go next year to fix problems.
Councilmember Escobedo.
It's gonna be an extra bucket.
Hannah, thank you for that, all that work. I mean, just already to get all the information, it was hard, I can't believe all the hours that you spent doing all this work. Yeah, most of the questions that have been answered. My main concern it was, that the fire department and the police department, they were included on this, and, you answered my question, that answer was in, because I noticed there was zeros everywhere for the fire department, oh, yeah. Judge kind of asked me to be sure, you know, that they approve these, like, but, you answered all those questions, so they are in the budget, and because it's important that they have the resources so they can serve and protect the community. So, and then, I like that, Parks and Recreation, they have some budget also, so we don't wait till they're almost there, so we can keep. Because, I mean, all the kids that want to come play to the parks, and then because of the cost of water and all that, they have to check it out, so. But, yeah, I see that it's all included. Thank you for your hard work, and we. Thank you.
Councilmember Stone?
Thank you, Mayor. Appreciate the time to be able to ask a few questions, and I know we all have, after getting a week off, we'll have 3 weeks to do a lot of questions here. A few line items I'm looking at specifically, and I'll start with saying that the way I don't look at it as a conservative or not conservative budget. It's either will we have a surplus, a balanced budget, or a deficit. And you know, I have to say that of course we want a balanced budget, but noting that we have a lot of work to do. We're going to have to look at ways to being able to make sure that we're maintaining our city services, but perhaps actually adding to them and doing better in that way. I'm noticing obviously the typical things, insurance, health going up. I also have noticed a few of the nonprofits and other places that we do help out with expenses. I'm happy to report that the library board is very pleased that the city is still, and I'm noticing that they're continuing to look at the $40,000. And just a side note, I saw Councilmember Stevens, of course, very generous with his work over at the library expansion. And I guess adding on to that, and I believe another council member just noted this as well, but the Family Crisis Center, is there a reason that we're not including them in the 25 year?
So the family crisis is included. The zero item is actually the AISD childcare. That was a one-time approval by council. The numbers are small, so everything kind of runs together.
Yeah, I might have just done my highlight across weirdly. Oh, fantastic. And just on that side note then too, if we're putting a zero where there used to be money, you know, there's questions sometimes, and that was a huge win on behalf of the mayor and the council. So are they still looking at trying to get some additional funding, or any ways that we can help them with that?
That was a one-time approach by the ISD to utilize the matching funds from the various entities to apply for a grant that would then double the money that we provided. So okay. It's included in this year's budget because council authorized it in this year's budget, but there has been no discussion moving forward. I do know that they did receive the matching funds from all of the different entities, and that they're also able now to utilize the Texas program where you can reduce the fees because you can get reimbursed by the state for, I know that they were looking at that as well. Yeah.
Okay. Fantastic. Thanks for that info. Couple of last items, and I know again we have lots of work to do on this too. Could you review what you had mentioned? I'm just trying to see, and it's again really hard to hear everybody, but I'll come back and try to see what we can do with those microphones. But on the American Rescue Act, where we're putting that on the wastewater treatment plan, is that correct?
Yes, all of it has been allocated by the council to go towards the wastewater treatment plant. It's in this year's budget, but the project just barely completed the bid process. So it's also included in next year's budget for the full amount, specifically for that project.
Awesome. Thank you, Megan. And then just last thing to mention there on the fire department, I'm in agreement to kind of get a little bit more transparency out of that department. I know we've had some conversations myself with city staff, as well as I'm sure Councilor Stevens is working on this too, as being the county representative or liaison. One thing that I just want to note here in a public forum is we've had discussions on the back end of our fire hydrants. And I'm really glad that every single one worked during our, one of the biggest fires the town has had in a long time. With that being said, is in past years, I'm not saying last year or the year before, but we've had checks on nearly every fire hydrant in town, and we have not had that in a good long while. And so this might be a good time to perhaps look at some line items or giving some consideration to requesting how those dollars are spent, especially noting that it's one of those departments that, you don't always want to have to pay for it all the time. And, it's a lot of money maybe here and there and could be another allocated somewhere else, but you need it when you need it. And so just noting that we definitely want to get quite a bit more transparency and help from the county and being able to make sure that that is being spent wisely and so forth. The last thing I'll note is just on the police department budget. I noticed, and this could also be I'm highlighting lines over here and double screening trying to, but I noticed training is quite a bit higher, and I mean not huge, but we're talking $5,000 or so versus last year. Is everybody trained up? Are we not having, or and what's going on there? Was there a big training year this past year, and it's not anticipated next year?
So the reason why the projected year end is higher is because there was a lot of additional training provided to our police department this year.
Okay.
We did increase it for next year because Chief Lasoya has has implemented a training program from new hire to his oldest tenured supervisor, so that they're always on top of the ever-changing laws and requirements that unfortunately come with that type of job.
Awesome. I think that's good news. We want a really well-trained police department. And so kudos to Chief Lasoya. Thank you for allowing me that time. Back to you, Mayor.
So at this time, we're going to. Yeah. It's her action.
Shift it.
Still Megan, so we still need her.
I agree.
Sorry, I'm sorry. Okay, all right, and we are back in session, 7:11 PM. All right, so, discussion item D, city manager.
So this is to discuss the vacation abandonment sale of city property procedures requirements, including utility easements. Over the past several months, actually this past fiscal year, we've seen a steady increase in those requesting to purchase city property, requesting the city to abandon city property. This had come before council once before. We had discussion looking at possibly putting in an ordinance. We weren't all in agreement on the process and procedures. My biggest concern with this item is one, we have no application fee. It does require that we do provide notification, we do have public hearings because it is an ordinance. Two, looking at the utilities, do we want to sell property that is owned by the city that has utilities on it? Do we want to put in restrictions, based on the type of utilities? The other thing that is coming forward before council is the abandonment. I don't think that the city should ever abandon property. I think that the city should be sold. If it's to be abandoned, it goes in limbo. It's not owned by the city, nor is it owned by the property owner. It's not being put on the property tax. It's just kind of there. So I think it's really important that when we look at this and have these items coming before council, that we have some type of process in place. Included within the packet, is our current application in order for the city to make a decision to vacate, close, abandon, or purchase the city property. We are recommending that we do put in a formal ordinance to address this, to include a $350 application fee to cover the cost of publications and employee time. This does require utility inspections. We saw this with the last property that came before council, where we had multiple utilities, not just lines, but service lines as well. And then, of course, looking at the direction that the city wants to go as a whole. I know that we're not all going to be in agreement, but I think setting some parameters in place to allow for the understanding as a resident that if I choose to ask for the purchase, abandonment, vacate of the city property, that there are a little bit better guidelines in place. I also do ask that if we're going to look at continually selling off city property and we are required to have easements, that we look at putting some type of management program in place. Because it does hurt the city in the long run, especially when we don't keep up with all of our easements. Prime example is an easement in the Sunny Glen area that resulted in a building having to be relocated so we could go to a water line after the line broke, creating a dangerous situation for our employees. So that's something that we want to definitely take into consideration. The application does have some step-by-step process and procedures for residents who wish to go before council in regards to the different types of ability to relocate abandoned purchased property. Also included is a very start of a draft ordinance that does say that the city will sell city land in general. And of course, then there's the different categories as far as abatement, easements, narrow strips of land. And the city is required to look at fair market value, which is why we request an appraisal of a property to get an understanding of what's being purchased or being abandoned. There is some state regulation that we do also have to consider when we're looking at the sale of city property or abandonment of it. I just really wanted to bring this back on the table because I believe we have about 3 more coming down the road that people are requesting either be abandoned or that they purchase property. My biggest concern, of course, is still the easement. It is important that all of our utilities, including gas, have access to it. I also want the city to take into consideration that we have utilities out there that are on our right of ways, primarily our electric, AEP. And so they do have easements with the city for right of ways. When we sell that property, do we have something in place that still allows that easement to move forward? They don't have individual easements. I've seen very few easements with AEP because they encompass large sections of right of way at a time. So that's also something to take into consideration. And then the most important part is the process with, once we sell it, making sure it's replatted so that it no longer reflects the ownership of the city. Looking at the type of deed that's being provided, looking at the application, not only from the application for the actual purchase of the property or abandonment of the property, but actually maybe the replat of it as well, because that is the process. Combining the process, I think that this is just the start of a very healthy discussion. We are limited to our land, so part of the comprehensive plan will look at current and future use of land. So I think it's important to have this started and moving forward in a direction to help with the comprehensive plan as well, so that the city knows what do we want to do with our land. I don't think necessarily want to sell all of it off. I think there are some exceptions for things that we'll never utilize or build on. I think it's part of the discussion.
Councilmember Martinez?
I have a few questions. So they need to get a permit before they start building? And the permit, we should know if there is any, city utilities there.
So when it comes to the sale of the property, most of the time it comes up because they pull the permit and they realize they don't own the property. And so if they're building on city property, the permit's not granted. So then they come before the city to purchase the property or to ask the city to abandon it and to give it to them. I think that helps us having the permitting process in place. But for those properties that people just want, I want to have an acre lot instead of having a platted road middle of two separate lots.
Yeah, that was my second question. Why is abandoned? They have to be an owner, and they don't have an owner, they want to put the city. How do we know what is abandoned? Somebody name, somebody wants to buy because they want to start it.
So there's only two instances that I am aware of in my tenure with the city that the city abandoned the property. One is the 4th Street between the Jehovah's Witness Church and a triangle that they own. That was abandoned and they turned that more into their parking area. The city does not take care of it. It's not on the tax roll. The other portion that was abandoned, which is part of Skelton Runway, there was a street that continued where you have part of your drive-in. Half of it, well, the whole street was abandoned. Skelton's built their driveway through one half of it and the other half is just. Ideally, the property owner up against Skelton would be able to take over that other half. But we don't really, and I know that we do have Robert, our voting official here tonight, but I don't believe we can enforce any high weed code or anything on it because it technically does not belong to them.
But they build, how come they build, they don't belong to them?
Because it's setback. So they have.
So they bought it to the city or?
It's not like it's
And my last question, you mentioned the zone that they have services of water, electricity or gas. But we already sold Sargo Audi that it had some services there and we sold it away. So now everybody wants to say, well, how come you sell them, you don't want to sell me? So I agree that it has to be, so they have to pay for it. I agree with that one, sure, Now they can just take this forward, like, okay, now it's mine.
So that's why this is coming before council again, and the reason is for that, it is. Mr. and Mrs. Nisco purchased the property, but there is an easement on it, which allows us access to it at any given time, so they can't ideally build one. They can't put a structure, If they put a structure on it and the sewer line underneath breaks, we would destroy the structure to get to the sewer line at the owner's cost, because they know they can't build on it. It is one main sewer line that extends so far out, and they are aware of it. Other property, that people have asked to purchase have multiple lines on them and service lines. So you have your mains, which is your main line that people tap off of, and then you have your service line. For example, the street had 2 service lines in addition to the property that was being requested to purchase, that fed to other properties. So not only would it have to have the ability to get to those, it's water, it was sewer, and there was some unknowns in regards to the maybe a valve that actually cuts off the service to certain areas. Unfortunately, you know, when looking at utility review, we don't have a beautiful GIS, geographical
Yeah.
to be able to say, this is exactly what we have where, which is why it was recommended not to, and the fact that there was multiple service lines in that small area. Which is why I'm thinking that if we provided guidelines that kind of say, okay, I'm gonna have a utility review done, and not only do they have water, they have electricity, you know, we've got some power poles in there, we've got gas maybe. We've been very fortunate that gas has not become an issue, and maybe they have sewer as well. That the city comes back and say, well, unfortunately, that we're not gonna sell that property because of the utilities. Maybe it's a square footage issue. I think it's why we need to have this conversation, because you're right, why do we do for one and not another? I think putting in some guidelines to assist with that. I also think it's appropriate to put the guidelines that say, okay, this is everything you're responsible for, and this is everything you're responsible for. And also having the ability to have the, you know, administration say, okay, we're not gonna move forward with the sale of this property, it's not within the scope of the city. And then if they want to appeal it, then it goes before. That way you're not. I think we've got one that's applicable right away.
So who will set up these guidelines, also?
Yes. So the city council at the recommendation, and we do utilize other cities, we love to share. So we look at what other cities are doing to make sure we're kind of within the same requirements, and we do look at the state law as well. We make a recommendation with council's input, and then council ultimately make the decision on the guidelines of which we want to go. And that's what we utilize. But we'll get a separate meeting to see that guidelines. A separate meeting, I said, this is just discussion to get an idea. I really truly think that we do put something in the process and have a piece in place, because it does take time and work. We've had multiple people coming in. I joke and say, you know, I want to get my application when we have guidelines so I can buy the property I'd like to buy. But having this in place, I am fearful of abandonment unless we put very specific boundaries, guidelines, regulations, whatever word you like to use. So that we don't end up with the properties that are kind of, they don't belong to anyone, but they're being utilized. That's it.
Councilmember Escobedo?
So you put on their, vacation for this?
It's vacate.
Oh,
We know what's on your mind.
And that's also something that I think we really do need to look at is like, and when we've talked about our ordinance, putting specific definitions to what. So basically to vacate. Something like, but it's too bad. That's an action item for me.
I don't know, it's taking long. I mean, I was.
Okay, Councilmember Stevens?
So, thank you. I know that one. I think it's fair that those who are interested in pursuing a city property know whether or not the city is going to sell it for a profit.
That's part of it, like the ordinance.
So that's. Second, I'm in favor of what you're suggesting. I would like to see us add a schedule in here about what happens. So, for example, purchaser deliver a check for the finance department. Only 5 days after past ordinance, but we don't put anything in here relative to. So, AKA discussion about alleyway over here. Yeah. Just, I think there needs to be timelines on both sides of the discussion. If I read this, the way it's currently written, it implies that Geo is going to be kind of the manager of this process. Is that the case?
The way it's current.
Yeah, I mean, it's about
That's the way it currently is, that change.
Okay.
You're just, like I said, we're presenting you ideas
Yeah.
and options.
what do you recommend?
I think it does need to. City Secretary's office, only because that,
That's fine with me. I just asked the questions. Geo's got a good sense about what goes on. I just want to make sure, sir.
I think it's just important that there are some parameters right now. Application, like she mentioned, we don't collect anything, but I immediately write the ordinance. Good job. I mean, it's a lot of prep staff time, and then for it to find the council and it's denied, you see what I'm saying? Like, it's a waste of time. That's
I know that
why.
as a resident, so I got, my property is split by a city street. I'd like to buy it. I've been waiting for all this to kind of get sorted out. I would not want to put the money on the table for whatever it's gonna take to buy it and not see a deed for 4 months.
so I'm glad you brought that up, because we did just implement so once they get the deed, they have to replat, and the replat does have a schedule.
Very good, okay.
So I think we can tie the deed would be issued within so many days.
Yep.
And then the replat would be available at the next scheduled time allotted.
Right. And Gio, I wouldn't write an ordinance. If someone comes and says, I'm the following, I wouldn't even think about an ordinance until she says it's okay to take to council. At that point, then the 350, then it can start. I just don't want a resident have to pay the 350 and find out, sorry, at the end of fifth, we got 47 water lines going through the year, we're gonna buy. So that's to me, thinking through that process from a standpoint. It is interesting in here that we currently have, the application must contain the title verification of ownership. That's a city responsibility, not a resident. So we have to just think our way through what it says and what it means. And you may want to get a couple of people in to say, oh, I'm interested in buying that. Let's walk through the whole process, see how it might work for me.
And I know when we talk about the title and ownership, we're also considering, I know like for Fifth, they own both sides.
No, I understand that. No, I get all that.
So
It's just,
clearly
yeah,
articulated.
clearly articulate, lay it out, so we don't run into the other issues. And then the other thing, the state code says that the fair market value is determined by the appraisal obtained by the political subdivision owns the land. In the case of the land interest owned by almost municipality, the fair market value may be determined by the price obtained by the municipality at public auction. I really just think we need to clarify what the responsibility is for that and make sure it's compliant with state code.
And it has gone back and forth over the past.
Oh, I know. I just want to make sure we've got that sorted through. Because you don't want someone to come back and say, well, I bought it, someone contest it, well, you didn't get done by municipality, violate state code.
And I know in the past, the old application, I believe, we're talking like 12 years ago. The city did request the appraisal, but then the person who's wishing to buy it paid the cost.
Yeah, however it works, whatever makes sense, is fine. I just want to make sure we're consistent about it. I do think it's the right thing to go do. And if you want to get a guinea pig to go play through it back and forth the process on that. Thank you.
Councilmember Nance?
Questions, in your tenure here, has property ever been sold to the city, like the reverse of this?
Donated.
Yeah, so we've had it donated, but not actually sold. We have not bought.
Is there a definition of narrow strips of land? Is that subjective or objective?
I do believe the state has some, more specific terminology for it, that we can include.
kind of wondering, probably clarifying for the end user.
And one thing I noticed when I was reviewing, this is from another city, kind of, I together. Is one of the things that's always been recommended is to include the specific, sections of the state, local government.
You mentioned easement management program, because I was thinking with turnover and everything, does that fall on record retention then? Because I'm assuming this would get memorialized in an ordinance. And then it would just have to be searchable through an ordinance like Geo with the fair lodging.
Shows up on deed.
On the deed?
Easements are in deeds. And you want to make sure that always easements are in the deeds. That way, properties that are transition, it's a requirement, same like mineral rights, having in deed.
So that
It's
the,
just making sure that when it transfers, that the does not get drawn.
So you have in there, I'm sorry, Darren,
No, you're good.
but including in here, the city will review the deed prior to being recorded.
So currently, we're writing the deed, our legal team, and we've asked them to do the easement as well, and then following up. But then there's a filing fee. So when we talk about fees, I advocate that this should be something that should be included. When I talk about easement, management program, is making sure that records management has access to all of our easements. It has been fun looking for several of the ones with the water line, because they do go back to the early 20s. And making sure that you can see that transfer from ownership to ownership.
There's a guy who put in a septic tank at the airport. I had to pull 10 city deeds for the purchase of the airport before TCEQ would approve my septic tank here. So it pulled off. Yeah, so it's.
The airport was a conglomerate of multiple.
But anyway, they are.
and is the cat involved at all in deed transfer?
Not that I'm aware, it all goes through the county clerk's office. And then of course, just having one of our records individuals.
Brewster County Appraisal District Board is not what the county office does work at. It always tends to be on top of my spot. It's one of the challenges the CAD has when something gets sold. They enter your property updates or any of that stuff, you can't do legal. But there's a hole there.
That would be important.
And it is important, we are not aware when properties always sell, besides word of mouth, to make sure that those easements. We do have an easement on one of the hangars out at the airport, that the hangar has been sold 3 times, and every time I have to remind them that there is an easement. You chop off a corner of your building, to the line,
And that is in the deed.
yeah, for sure.
But in the case, I'm just helping out here, but in the case of the airport, the city owns the land. The lessor leases that land, so the city owns the deed.
They just built their hangar on the track.
One of my questions was curiosity. If land is abandoned from the police, perspective, is that still under law? Does it still fall within the city ordinance as law? Okay.
Is Carol still here?
He's here. Chief, you want to come up to the podium?
It's a valid question.
You put in a law question on me on the spot.
From a code enforcement,
We
there's
love
no
doing
one
that
to
too,
send a
Chief.
notice.
Sorry,
So you
what's the question?
If land was abandoned, would it still fall within the ordinance, legal ordinance of the city? If there's no rightful owner to land?
I know for High Week, there's no one to cite.
Yeah, so. That's a good question. That'd be an attorney question.
My sense is it's gonna fall under the county for sure. It's county.
But if it's within the city limits,
Yeah, so Skelton's Raceway, next door to the alley, Skelton's Raceway. If someone shoots someone, an example, on the half that the city abandoned, who's responsible?
right?
Okay.
Is that what you were, where you're
I
talking
was
about?
just kind of wondering, and more for like a legal ordinance, if anything falls in, for that property, we have $500 misdemeanors, and everything else. So if anything like that did occur, I was kind of wondering how that would be handled.
I think that there's certain things that we just can't enforce, and then there's some that we.
which is another reason it's not being a property, very question. Cool.
And it's weird, is it, when you actually brought that up, that actually a crime was committed there, and so. In that alleyway,
Yeah, the other way,
in that alleyway, so there was a crime, yeah, we're responsible for it, but as far as enforcing, type of code enforcement. Good question.
Wonder if that doesn't become Mad Max, where all the crime gets committed on.
It's all, just a plethora of class C misdemeanors.
You said that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know how much abandoned property we have?
I'm only, like I said, aware of two, and all of our, kept trying to find other ones. It's just the two that I'm aware of.
All right, Councilmember Stone?
Thank you. I'll be quick, just noting on time. I think a lot has been said here. The only thing I would want to add to something like this is noting what those adjoining properties that are signing on to the petition in relation to some of the past sales. Adjoining properties have meant that they literally have to touch it, and there might literally be an alley between someone that is, not touching it by a 10-foot alley that is a public street. And so I'd be interested in making sure that we do include, or rather put adjoining properties and expand that definition and or add a definition that would perhaps, put a few more properties like those that are across the street or things like that. I think it would then help that if everybody's on board, then it makes it super easy. If not, then they come show up and they talk about why they're not on board. And if we're trying to expedite this, I think that would just be a win-win type of addition to this. But thank you, Megan, for putting the work on this. That's it.
So if council's okay with that, I'd like to support.
Agree? Yeah. Agree? Councilmember Stone? Yes, please, Megan. All right, moving on to action items. All right, so council, I want you to feel free to call for the question when you feel that we have had enough discussion. And the way that you do that is you call for the question. That would be the motion. I would need a second. There is no discussion, and then we would vote, ready to actually vote on the item, the action item. So you can call for the question. All right, so action item A belongs to the city manager.
Thank you, Mayor. Approve the second and final reading of ordinance 2024-08-01, an ordinance amending Appendix C, zoning to the Alpine Code of Ordinances, amending Appendix C, zoning to remove the provision that provides the ability for city council or the planning and zoning commission to initiate a spot zoning or non-contiguous zoning designation, with exceptions, amending the application fee from $250 to $350.
I need a motion. I need a second. All right, with the discussion, the city manager will have you lead. I also want to point out to council that Rob is here if you have any questions that you need to direct.
So this was originally brought before council after a planning and zoning commission meeting in March to remove the allowance for city council and planning and zoning to spot zone. After consideration, it was kicked back from the council back to planning and zoning to revisit with the exceptions that were outlined in the Farr versus Tippett Supreme Court case that allows for councils and planning and zoning to make these decisions as long as certain guidelines and requirements are met. The first reading was approved by city council on August 6th, and this is the second and final reading.
Okay, Councilmember Stevens. Okay, I need a second. Okay, let's vote. I'm voting for the question or calling for the question. Okay, City Secretary, all council members voted to approve calling for the question. Okay. And now let's vote for the question to approve the second and final reading of ordinance 2024-08-01. Councilmember Martinez?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, Secretary, all council members voted to approve the second and final reading of ordinance 2024-08-01. Okay, moving on to action item B. This also belongs to the city manager.
Approve the second and final reading of ordinance 2024-08-02. An ordinance memorializing the city ward designations for properties annexed to the city limits of Alpine, providing for findings of facts, repealer, severability, effective date, proper notice, and hearing clause.
Okay, I need a motion.
Move as presented.
I need a second. Discussion, city manager.
So in the beginning of this year in January, when we were looking at the voter, Ward 1, Ward 2, Ward 3, and who could vote where, it was brought to our attention that several pieces of property that were annexed were not properly designated by the council into which ward they belong. So Gio and his team did a lot of time collecting all of that information to present an updated ordinance to memorialize which annexed properties belong to which ward. This includes southwest or northwest section of town, as well as where the Skyway Garden one building housing was put in. That way, it does allow those in those areas to vote. All of the information is included in the packet.
Okay, Councilmember Martinez. Okay, Councilmember Nance.
So we're approving this directly tonight. What's this look like for voters?
So once it's approved, it will go to Lauren Esbom, the election coordinator, and she can update to ensure that they all have access to vote in city elections in different boards of the state.
Right now, they don't have a vote.
Some do have the ability to vote, just not in the board that should have been originally allocated, and some don't.
Okay. Councilmember Escobedo. Councilmember Stevens. Councilmember Stowe.
Thank you, Mayor. I just want to quickly note that while I'm going to vote in favor of this, because I think everybody needs the ability to vote, Ward 2 is about a third less than Ward 1 and 5 in registered voters. And so I'm hoping that we can revisit this after the current election in November to be able to perhaps look at some rezoning or redistricting in some way to be able to make sure that we have closer to even distribution of registered voters throughout the town. But thank you again.
Okay, let's vote. Aye.
Aye.
All right.
City Secretary, we approve the second final reading of ordinance 2024-08-02 unanimously. Moving on to action item C, that's also the city managers.
Approve resolution 2024-08-23, a resolution of the city council amended approving appendix A utility fees, setting the rates for fees for the city utility services for the fiscal year 24-25.
Get a motion?
Presented.
I need a second. Councilmember Escobedo. Councilmember Escobedo, seconded. City Secretary. Discussion, city manager.
As set by ordinance 2021-04-04, the utility fees are reviewed annually by the city council at the recommendation of all departments who are included in these fees. After reviewing the fees with all the utility departments, this includes water, wastewater, sanitation, and gas. It was decided to move forward with some slight increases in the various items listed. The first increase on the water side is the water taps and meter settings. After conversation with one of the field workers and the cost and the time in which to implement a new tap, it was requested to increase the cost slightly. This includes the cost of the meter box, the labor, and the equipment used. This is for the 3/4 inch tap, which is your standard residential tap. It is also for the 1 inch tap, which is another standard tap that's utilized. And then it was requested to remove the 1.5 inch water tap. This is not a standard size within our system. We have very few left within the system, and the last recall of one being installed was over 15 years ago. So we'd like to remove that altogether. We did want to include that for taps that are greater than 2 inches, that it includes specific terminology, that the minimum labor and equipment is 2 hours. It does take some time to install new taps, and that's without something going wrong. So we wanted to put a minimum time period for that to be included in the overall cost of those taps. We also requested that be included in sewer taps to update the minimums, 2 hours for labor and equipment. Also included, we did not include in the original fees, the rate outside the city limits. Although it is included in the ordinance as a whole, the review of the fee structure did not reflect the 1.5 greater than inside the fee. We wanted to include that in there as well. We also wanted to include the meter and cutoff. We increased it to cover the fluctuating cost of the meter and the meter box. So this is if someone came in and say, I want to buy a meter and the meter box to put in a water tap. We do very rarely see these, but if it does come up, we have the ability to charge it. We also did want to include the delinquency for non-faltered meters. So in review of the utility bill and in all the conversations we've had it where we can have an individual request for a meter test. When the meter test does not fail and they request a new meter, we wanted to include the actual labor and equipment utilized to replace that meter if the resident's requesting it without the meter being faulted. So if the meter's working and they want us to replace it, we want, to recoup some of the time and equipment that it would take to replace it. One of the bigger impacts will be on the sewer rates. We are requesting that the residential flat rate be increased from $15.50 to $17.50. In light of all of our conversations resulting in the infrastructure and the public input, we do feel that the operating costs and repairs to the wastewater treatment plant, they're one of the lower out of all of, if you look at the budget. We are requesting that $2 increase in a flat rate. Before the flat rate was implemented, customers, residential, would pay a fluctuating sewer rate, depending on their water usage for the 3 lowest months of the year. Right now, we roughly collect between $58,000 and $59,000 a month, to maintain a wastewater treatment. That is not a lot of money considering we have about $4 million left in repairs. So we'd like to make a slight increase for this year, evaluate what it brings in, and look at how we can utilize some of that money moving forward for projects. We also are looking at increasing the liquid sewage waste fee to assist with the operating and cost of the wastewater treatment plant. Liquid sewage waste fee are your sewer disposal groups. They're the ones that come in and clean out your septic tanks. They're the ones who may come in and clean up other items. They directly deposit at our sewer plant. We'd like to increase those fees because that does affect our sewer system. That is additional waste that isn't always monitored and regulated to the standards we need it to be. I don't know if anyone knows what a rubber glove does on a wastewater treatment plant, but it can cause damage.
As well as the jeans.
Yes, jeans, shoes, you name it. So we are requesting that we do update that fee as well. I do want to point out that we want this to be effective October 1st, new fiscal year. This does give us enough time to notify these vendors that there is going to be an increase. Typically that increase does get pushed back on the consumer. We are a consumer as well, so we will end up paying part of that fee for our porta potties. And the last one, in discussion with Randy Guzman, our gas utility director, he is mandated by federal law to make sure he stays up with the maintenance of the gas system. We have seen lower revenue come in because we have more winters. We aren't seeing the heavier gas use because of this. So they are requesting an increase in cost of service, an additional $1 to help be able to continue the maintain repairs to the system.
Right. Councilmember Nance.
Couple things, are these not increased fees reflected in budget or are they immaterial?
So they are reflected in the budget, and how we could do that is we looked at the base number of users, took those additional increases and then multiplied it by each month times.
So we don't all reflected in budget fees? No. $12 extra per month. spending about $50 per, household. So they just. We do have water, and we did add water labor to change a water meter. There was no list as far as replacing, we spoke about, replacing a meter, and they just wanted to replace it. Would that occur now?
So that would be a non-fault. So when we replace a non-fault meter, it would be the cost of the meter, which is part of what we had as said meter and cutoff. In addition, we're requesting the minimum of 1 hour labor.
Yeah, whatever the cost is, plus my hour.
Councilmember Escobedo.
So if somebody asks for, should we put the statement?
So they get a complimentary reread. So the reread is structured where if we request it because we all of a sudden going through an account, like, whoa, what happened here? When we request a reread, it doesn't impact the customer. The customer can request a reread, and then after the second time on their request, there's a $25.
That was standard previous.
Yes, that's been in here since.
Councilmember Martinez.
You said that it would be effective on October 1st, right?
Yes.
The people going to be notified about the raise, or they just be surprised when they see the bill?
So there's different ways to consider that. Everyone is notified because after an ordinance or a resolution, the public is posted. But what we've been doing is we started to include more information in the building itself. So we hope that when someone gets a utility bill, that when they see that extra flyer that they will take over, we would include the additional costs for the sewer because that will impact all of the residents. The taps will be part of the application process for the that as well. And the liquid sewage will notify them first through a certified. So we do notify them whether or not I can't answer if they read it or not, but and then of course it will be on our website. We update to the different departments that it's effects, so that it's all.
Yeah, this letter that we're sending with the bill, with the Twitter, the oversight in Spanish.
We can include in Spanish.
Will it be announced on the radio? So for example, I don't get a bill.
Yes, we can. Okay. So we're trying different methods of trying to get it.
Mine's all electronic. Councilmember Stevens.
Yeah, I support this, that you're all in favor of raising rates, given this technology works for.
Councilmember Stowe.
These look like, pretty typical small increases, and I'm glad that we'll be able to tell our neighbors and our constituents that, these are going to help us be able to pay for some, obviously working on getting some of those services, water and wastewater, up to par. And thank you, members, for asking multiple times, talking about water bills. I'm sure that will come up, but we can point them to this moment in the meeting as well as that FAQ. But thank you.
Okay, let's vote. Councilmember Martinez.
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, City Secretary, Resolution 2024-08-23 was approved unanimously with all city council members voting in favor. Moving on to action item D, City Manager.
Approved resolution 2024-08-24, a resolution approving the recommended hotel occupancy tax grant awards from the Hotel Occupancy Tax Committee for the fiscal year 24-25.
Need a motion?
Make a motion to approve as presented.
I need a second. Okay, and with that discussion, we have Chris Ruggia here who, just in case of instructions. City Manager.
My discussion was gonna be Chris Ruggia, please come up. Yes, thank you. Although I got to sit through the meeting and we had a good conversation, I think it would be best.
Perfect, okay.
Okay, well,
in your packet and in the resolution, you have a breakdown of the requests, or the portions of the grant requests that were recommended for your approval by the Hotel Occupancy Tax Committee. The procedure that they went through, they first confirmed whether or not the applications were complete. There are some required attachments that were necessary for grants to be considered for funding. So on the spreadsheet that I attached in your packet, you'll see the grayed out the application. No, there were 4 applications that were found by the committee not be complete. So those ones were not able to be considered for funding. After that, we had a $400,000 budget for available funds to recommend for awards. So every grant was reduced somewhat from their requests, some more than others. There was a lot of discussion from the committee. And what you're seeing is the results of those discussions. At this point, I don't really know what else to tell you about the specific questions that you have, or that have to go into any area.
Councilmember Martinez?
They used to before, a friendship, they get 100%, that's like 1 year, like 75, is this still working like that?
Yeah.
No.
That was a policy that was very briefly in place under a previous city manager administration. Very quickly, there's 2 different, more than 2, but there's 2 major different ways one can think about how a fund like this might work. What you're describing is like an incubator, something that's really focused on getting new events started and then to release them to the wild very quickly. That was kind of found after that that model was tried, that in a town the size of Alpine, we don't have so many events that are ready to jump up and start, that is really gonna work, considering that the events that have worked well for us over time also sort of support. So that's an ongoing conversation that can be had, but right now that's not actually the policy to try to wean events from these grant funds. The way that we try to address, though, is one of the criteria that the committee used to score is to ensure that they get extra points for using less of their percentage of their total budget. So they look at, if someone comes and asks us, I have an idea and I want the city to pay for 100% of the expenses, that gets scored very low. Whereas if they come in saying, I've got all these sources of revenue, and this is gonna help us put on the event, but only this part, that gets scored better. So that's the approach we're taking right now. Yeah.
Councilmember Stevens?
I have no additional comments other than thanks to all of our board. And they have a very, very disciplined process, including recusal equal part of those dialogue discussion.
Councilmember Escobedo? Councilman Nance?
Being on the art law board, I'll keep myself on the code. But I was getting part of the parliamentarian, I could ask questions, that are written outside of art law.
I would say that.
Because, and I shot these questions in before. Questions that are, the $3,000 for Richmond. I believe last year we had a discussion with that school, they sort of were not assigned, we were gonna, they might not assign. Or, in the time, I think that was 8,000, something like that, what the request was. But we denied that one, I believe, because we were gonna discuss what that looks like as far as from a private business, increasing the resale value of a private business, on that, in HOT. From my viewpoint, that can be done as a matter of almost economic development, but I really think we need to get the, guardrails on that, because Texas Historical Commission claims any building that is 50 years or older, so anything from 1974 or older, is historic or will be eligible in the historic district. So if we're gonna fund this Richie request, I think we need to set our definition of what is fair, so that next year, someone that might be labeled a 50-year-old building might be.
I completely agree. As I recall, the difference in my memory of the two events is, it's different members of the Hotel Occupancy Tax Committee. I did feel that the Granada sign request was really deserving, and a good fit for the purpose of the historical category of the hot funds. The committee at the time was really uncomfortable with the idea of funding a private business in there, in this, even though it's such a visual, iconic downtown landmark. This is an almost completely new committee. It's not all new members, but about half of them are new. And that specific question was raised as to, well, Granada was refused last year for this reason. This fits in the same category. The discussion that came up, and I'm not quite addressing your issue, but I'm sort of explaining around the two. So within this one, what swayed them, I think, was the fact it was really an economic development argument in the sense of leading to hotel nights. That at the moment, the Ritchie is our most active music venue, and the prospect of this historic building having the opportunity of more music in different weather conditions, that idea seemed to really sway them. So in that sense, it makes sense to me. I would definitely encourage you to follow through with the committee's recommendation, but your point is very well taken, that there is no particular policy in this regard. And right now, the procedure is, or the policy is, well, we have these people who you've approved to consider it, but they don't have real specific guidance on that question. And unfortunately, there wasn't enough time to get meetings before all the grant policy came through to start working those things. And I know that Councilmember Stevens has definitely some ideas for the kinds of things that the committee should be working on. And in our quarterly meetings, we'll start. So that's where we're at the moment. All right.
Joanna Laxton is also on the hot committee.
Yeah, Joanna Laxton, Hot Committee, Ward 5, Planning and Zoning. In answer to your question too, one of the thoughts that went through our mind on that was, I'm not sure about the Granada, I wasn't in on that conversation, but this particular conversation, the Ritchie wasn't asking for 100% either. So that made a big difference because they were just looking to supplement what they were already doing so they could go ahead and get it done. And to me, that made sense.
I had a couple other questions, so you might stick around there. Just in case if you have an opinion on this. The other one is the Coconut improvements. If y'all could speak to what those Coconut improvements are gonna be.
Oh, boy, I've slept since that meeting.
We didn't have a list,
There-
but we asked for them to provide one next year before they answered it.
Yeah, let me look here. On those coconut, okay, right, the 30,000 in historical restorations, those things are for the fabric of the structure, and getting, I think, keeping the field playable is a big part of that as well. There was you'll note in the footnotes or whatever, there was a significant request for lighting, that was specifically put to you for later, a recommendation, once they get that project, the funding, et cetera, of that project lined up, whatever was really determined. But that doesn't really answer your question.
And it kind of does, dovetail on what I'm speaking about, is $30,000 in order to keep that field playable. I think that is a good investment. These capital improvements, historic capital improvements, we spoke before, that could go to the golf course, or other entities for any kind of water, replacement or anything else. What scares me is this is the HOT money becoming a pot, for a limited select group of people. So these larger I think it's important for like Art Walk and all these others to have that money year over year, even outside of Art Walk. All these other great events that actually occur, Viva Big Bend, trappings, because they kind of require that capital infusion to put those events on. But the actual capital improvement, I would like to see that money possibly spread around so that more people are getting the opportunity. So maybe that's a year-over-year thing.
And I see no obstacle to the council putting any kinds of caps on any kind of category. You could say, this is the maximum we're going to put into any given into any given project. One of the things that beyond just the age of a property that I would argue very strongly for in occupancy tax is the position of the structure within the community as a tourist visits. So that's where the Ritchie, the Granada, and Coconut Field are actually three of the most prominent structures that I would consider applicable, because they're, at this point, their landmark is and historic. Part of their quality of the visit that somebody's gonna have is about their stories, about that history. And so a building, so if the golf course, just as an example, were to submit, one of the things I would really be looking for would be, how is the history of the golf course part of the experience of playing golf there? Now, if the country club decided that that was an important part of their story and who they were, and they wanted to put some historical exhibits in there or something like that, that's one of the things that is gonna limit the pool of appropriate recipients for that. Yeah, and I think under the law, it really would need to be, we could check with Texas Hydrologic Association for details of that.
So related to that, that's one of the reasons my push was, let's get the hot committee meeting before we just talk about allocation. Let's talk about a strategic utilization of that, because we're about ends and ends, trying to bring tax revenue in. That's what this is all about. And I think we've got a ways to go before we're thinking of a broader strategic perspective, and that's going to be part of the discussion. The next hot committee was supposed to be on the whatever next week. And
Thursday.
And I get the agenda, and so the horse is on me, but that's what we're trying to do.
I might also add that, as a committee, we've requested that, for say, Coconut Field and anyone else that has requested funds going forward, that if they come back for the next year, we want to see photos of what they actually use the funds for the previous year, because they're not providing that at present. So they just keep coming back asking for money, and you want to help them, but you need to see some proof of what those funds were used for prior. I might also add that your economic development would probably help with the items like the golf course, because then that person could go out and let them know that if you do certain things, then certain things are available to you through Hockett.
Councilmember Stone?
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Chris, for being here tonight. Always love hearing from you. I got a couple questions just about the application and a few items on here. First, just most interesting, what is the Texas Tour 90? I know it's only $1,000, but I'm just wondering what that new line item is.
That one is a brand new proposal. It was an idea that Nadine Manhart, who I believe she's in Marathon, had, which was supporting touring musicians by providing venue and travel information. Her idea was initially about our area, about Marathon, Alpine, but then she expanded it to all of US 90. So the idea being that entire corridor to encourage touring musicians to utilize that and to give them good information about performance opportunities.
Is that going to be on a website, or is
Yeah,
this
it's primarily web, yeah.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I've heard a little bit about that. I'm guessing she's going to other taxing entities. I don't think you can do too much work across the entirety.
She actually asked for quite a bit more than
Okay.
she was recommended to be awarded, and part of that was the geography that she's representing
Sure.
was so much wider than what, so they said, well, we'll give you this, and you can use the green light for the small amount as proof of concept to take to some other
And
funding.
keep working on it, grow it. Okay, neat. And then just asking about the application process. Is there any types of, I loved hearing that, at least like pictures of what you do that are tangible, but is there any other types of requirements that we're looking into? I don't know if it's an audit or a tax type of like if you are a nonprofit, seeing your last year's IRS statement, things like that. What do we require on these applications?
Right now, we require a report, which is, most of the time it's let us know how it went. I tend to ask, let us know how you promote it, so that we can get a pool of knowledge that we can share with other events. And our city manager has something to add.
Counselor Stone, I think the important part to know is this is a reimbursement. So they don't get a check up front and then tell us what they did with it. They actually have to spend their own funds first.
Sure.
And then if we reimburse what is qualified under our grant.
And is that done in any sort of like line by line item, or how is that done? Either way that y'all answer that.
How it's done is they make their request, it's broken out by the categories, the columns in the spreadsheet. And so I try to meet with every grant recipient and get their general plan, so I know what kinds of things they're gonna do. And then they send the documentation to me first. And I look through it and I ensure that the goal is that the paperwork's sufficient to make the auditor smile if he looks in the file. And so, so I try to make sure that the paper trail's clear, that the expenditure that they're looking to reimburse is legal. And then secondly, was it a good idea? Hopefully we get to have that conversation as well. But yeah, they don't ever touch the money unless they've already spent it. Sometimes we pay directly an invoice, but, and in terms of like seeing their taxation and things, right now, the only thing we are asking of these grant entities is that they successfully put on the project that they're asking to do. So that's what we try and look at is, did it happen and did it go well? And
and so not necessarily in good standing or not, but I understand what you're saying. Yeah.
Didn't go well, that conversation is part of the hotel tax committee's discussion.
Sure. Okay. And then the only other question is just because it's a beloved event here, is Alpine Ghost Tours. Did we try to get a complete application, or what went on there?
Always do, but this year the deadline was the deadline and they missed the window. So I have talked to Margie about it, and she's all right. They might not do quite as many, but it's not gonna kill the event.
Okay, good to hear. And I know there's always possibilities of reopening this for one particular event or for the whole community again. Where's the last question is, where's our fund at the end of allocating $400,000?
I'll leave that to the city manager budget.
So what was proposed by the hotel occupancy tax committee is included in the current budget. So we proposed a $650,000 budget. We did not include any of the capital projects like we did last year. The $400,000 was allocated specifically to the grant. The remaining portion covers the additional 51% advertising qualified by the state. And then of course we have our visitor center and the staffing for that. And we have the director of tourism contract. So
awesome. Thank you again.
We'll have a fund balance that will be discussed as a separate item, specifically to address the capital improvements.
Very good. Thank you, Chris. Thank you, Megan.
Thank you, Chris. All right, let's vote.
Aye.
Let's see. Councilmember Stone. Okay, City Secretary, Councilmember Nance abstained due to a conflict of interest. The rest of council voted unanimously to approve resolution 2024-08-4. Thank you all. Thank you. Action item E, City Manager.
Approve resolution 2024-08-25, a resolution authorizing the renewal of the city of Alpine employee health insurance, dental insurance, and vision insurance benefits for the fiscal year 2024-25.
Need a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve. I'll make a motion.
I say good one. All right, discussion, City Manager.
We have started presenting this before council to get formal approval to move forward with our insurance. We're looking at a 5.9% increase for our Blue Cross Blue Shield, Within this ordinance, it does reflect that the city covers 100% premium cost for each full-time employee. The city also currently covers 50% of the dependent coverage for employee children and employee spouse. The city also currently covers 60% of the dependent coverage for employees and their families. The renewal rates for the Humana dental and vision are also included. The dental percentage increase is less than 1, it's about 2 cents. Increase, and the Humana vision reflects a 5.8% increase. The city does not cover the dependent coverage for Humana dental and Humana vision.
All right, Councilmember Stevens.
Is this the only time it is?
For this fiscal year, yes.
I'm just thinking about benefits going forward, we're still working the study and.
So when we, like I said, I'm redoing the budget process.
Yeah.
So these will be conversations ahead of the time. We received this information later than it's typically we see it about June. I didn't get this until after the first.
Thank you.
Councilmember Escobedo. Councilmember Nance.
Just one statement. So this is 837.
That is a rough estimate, yes.
Which tells us at around 100 employees, it costs us about 8,400 per employee for only health insurance vision. I just think that's good to know. That is a good one.
Yes, sir.
My number's always been, I just count on 9.
No questions? Councilmember Stone.
Yeah, I'm bouncing off. I think that $8,300 is a really good deal for the city. Fantastic that we're fully covering 100% of premium costs. Thank you.
All right, let's vote. Councilmember Martinez.
Aye.
Councilmember Nance.
Aye.
Councilmember Escobedo. Councilmember Stevens. Councilmember Stone. City Secretary, Council unanimously approved resolution 2024-08-25. Moving on to action item F, City Manager.
Approved payment of $47,840 from the Texas Class Capital Improvement Reserve Fund for the city's required matching amount of Texas Project TA23 City of Alpine Mobility Plan Grant.
I need a motion.
You guys presented.
I need a second.
Second.
Okay. And discussion, City Manager.
Council approved the city moving forward with a planning grant for mobility within the city of Alpine, in early 2023. The city did apply. We are one of 2 cities that have received the planning grant in the state of Texas. As part of the application, there is a match requirement. The city did authorize and approve resolution 2024-07-11, authorizing the advanced funding agreement, which did trigger the invoice that the state did present. I'm requesting that the funds be allocated from the Texas Class Capital Improvement Fund, which is a dedicated fund specifically for street and capital improvements, in the amount of $47,800. The current balance of that fund as of this report is $310,739.63.
Councilmember Escobedo. Okay. Councilmember Martinez.
No question.
Councilmember Nance.
The only thing I was going to mention is the TxDOT recently gave a survey where you can put more input into some of their long-term plans. I think Mr. Stevens and I both did when they were here in Alpine. They came back in and they're finalizing all that, and just to let the public know what some of that is. Going to be bike lanes from Alpine to Marfa, bike lanes from Alpine to Fort Davis to Marfa. So in theory, over time, there's going to be bike lanes throughout the entire triangle. Bike lanes from Studio Butte over to Presidio, I believe along that road even. Who knows if these are protected or not protected. The only reason that is interesting is over the next 10 years or 15, however long those plans emerge, it's going to dovetail very nicely into us actually having a mobility plan, because TxDOT's going to work in both areas.
Councilmember Stevens.
What's the timing? So you write a check, it goes out, what's next?
So the next step is they will have our first kickoff meeting, specifically for this grant. To piggyback off of what he said, because we are coming in at the perfect timing of all of the other state studies, they will actually be part of ours and incorporate with it as well. So once they get the check, then the agreement actually comes into play.
Councilmember Stone.
Thank you, Mayor. I just want to note that I'm really I'm hopeful for this grant to provide some really good information, which I know it will, but at the same time, I'm hoping we don't, we need corridors that folks can walk through. We need them for bicycles. And what we got out of this last text dot, the construction that's currently going to be started on 118 Highway 118 going north towards Fort Davis is just more parking spaces. Folks, bicyclists will still have to walk, or excuse me, bicyclists will still have to ride their bicycles in a lane. And I'm guessing there's going to be, at least a lane for them, because then cars can pass around them in the second lane there. But I'm really hoping that we get some great info to be able to build off of here, and that it's not just another far-fetched idea of trying to make a hike and bike trail through the creek, which I think is a great idea, but it just doesn't seem plausible at this current level of where the city is. Thanks, Mayor.
Let's vote. Aye.
Aye.
City Secretary, Council unanimously approved the payment of $47,840 from the Texas Class Capital Improvement Reserve Fund for the city's required matching amount of the TxDOT project TA23 City of Alpine Mobility Plan. City Manager?
Mayor, I ask that the council vote to extend the meeting past 9 o'clock.
Okay, I need a second. Discussion. Let's vote. Extend past 9.
Aye.
Okay, City Secretary, Council Scott. All right, City Secretary, Council. And with that, we're going to take a short 5-minute break. Maybe we won't.
Really fast, okay?
So we won't pass
that.
City Mayor report. City Secretary, please set the timer for 10 minutes. All right, first, I want to remind council that we are elected for local issues, municipality issues. The residents of the town, as we all know, have asked us to focus on water, wastewater, employees, and roads. We do not need to get distracted with state and national issues. Other cities who have been distracted with those have waded into state and national issues have been sued by the state of Texas. We don't want to embroil ourselves in lawsuits and have taxpayer money paying after that. It's a distraction. God, there's so much. You notice our meetings go very late here lately because we are trying to do so much. We don't need to be distracted with issues that are involved at the state level, they regulate, or the national level. So let's don't do that. This is not a platform for.
I'll remind the mayor that it's illegal to bring a gun onto a campus university in the state of Texas.
Order. Okay, this is not a platform for higher political aspiration. Second of all.
I'll remind the mayor of Uvalde, El Paso, and
Secretary.
Odessa.
Councilmember Stone, if you continue, you will be removed. All right, second. We have a lot of background information in our packet. Do your due diligence, read it, look at it. I know you guys do. Email Megan, email Geo, whoever it might be that it pertains to. If it's something such as a department issue, something that Rob or of course do that. And that way our discussions will go in a more orderly fashion. Okay, and with that, that's the end of my executive report. City manager, city secretary, 10 minutes on the clock.
Thank you, Mayor. For this evening, I continue with the topics that have been brought before council on the various items that the city is currently working towards. The first one is the water infrastructure. I had the opportunity to meet with Jacob and Martin last week as well as this week. They did an actual in-city visit. We switched gears a little bit because we have less than 2 months for the lead and copper mandated inventory reporting. Unfortunately, we have changed how we're moving forward with that to ensure that we meet the October 16th deadline. We have also established weekly meetings to ensure that we stay on top of this and that all parties involved are all on the same page. Here recently, we had a discussion involving Pierce Tank. We are still working through the different scenarios to determine the possible issues. We've looked at pressure plates, we've looked at valves, we've looked at PRVs, trying to determine why that tank is not currently filling up with water. We've also looked at the consideration of adding a new well into that pressure plate and other different items. We're kind of working through a one-by-one process. I've also tentatively scheduled a water workshop with Jacob and Martin for the second meeting in October. With the wastewater infrastructure, we did receive 2 bids. We did open those bids and it's scheduled for approval discussion on September 3rd, 2024. We are required to allocate all of our ARPA, American Rescue Plan Act, by the end of this fiscal year. So this next meeting is highly important to make sure that we do accomplish that. For the street infrastructure, we are still pending the delivery of the hot patch machine. They have moved out of the country club area and are now working along West Gold Ross and North Cherry, Orange Street from West Highway 90 to Uvalde, West Del Rio from 10th to 5th Street, North 11 from West Del Rio to West Brown, and North 8 from West Lockhart to West Avenue A. That's just the start. We're, like I said, you don't see it when the projected year end because they just started coming back to the city. On the employee compensation, we do have some setbacks. The request for information from the targeted group has been slow. Out of the 20 target groups that was requested, responded. They've now issued a freedom of information request from various targets to see if they can gather that information as well. Once they feel that they have enough information, they can proceed to the next step. But unfortunately, the response from other entities has not been forthcoming. In regards to the comprehensive plan, after the last meeting's discussion, I did provide council with the samples from the several different cities. I also reached out to a consultant for a possible presentation, and we're working on scheduling a workshop to have them come in and kind of work through the process of comprehensive plan versus strategic, the things that can be included to give the council a better understanding of the possibilities of this, plan. And the last one that has been a frequent item that I've added to my regular, city manager report is the utility billing. We were able to complete a frequently asked question, and we have been adding to it regularly in regards to questions that the residents may ask, regarding their bills. It has been uploaded and posted to our website. We have created a flyer of the top 10 questions that we receive in-house to, be included in the reports for the billing for customers. And it will be an item of discussion at the first City Talk, radio show in October.
Okay, any questions on the items that she has mentioned in her report, council? No question. Thank you. Okay. Look, you're failing. Okay, we're gonna move on to city council member comments. Councilmember Martinez. No. Councilmember Stevens. Okay, as far as my comments, we're gonna limit these to 30 seconds on the clock, city secretary. And please focus on items and people who are here in the evening. Once again, let's don't go into state and national issues. Councilmember Stone, any comments?
A national issue isn't a local issue like Sol Ross's weapons policies, which I'll read from a .gov or .edu. The unapproved possession, use, or sale of firearms, ammunitions, fireworks, major or minor explosives, or any lethal weapon is forbidden except licensed to carry holders that are concealed. Prohibition on weapons or firearms in which their owners are not licensed to carry, large knives and blades longer than 5.5 inches, any explosives or ammunition of any type. This law, quote, Sol Ross State University.
Stone?
Sol Ross State University, this law applies to everyone on campus. That includes organizations.
Okay, let me remind you that state and national issues belong there. Otherwise, we can embroil the city.
That's a local issue. It's a university in town.
All right, so with that, we are moving into executive session. This brings us to item number 13, executive session pursuant to chapter 551 of the Texas Government Code. The city council reserves the right to convene into executive session from time to time as deemed necessary during this meeting for any posted agenda item or to receive advice from an attorney as permitted by law. Tonight, the city council will recess into executive session pursuant to section 551.071 Texas Government Code to discuss Customs and Border Patrol hangar lease renewal and to discuss the possible sale and or acquisition of property for long-term overall city goals and planning, including city-owned structures. I need a motion.
I'm going to move into executive session to discuss the posted items.
I need a second. Okay, any discussion? Let's vote.
Aye.
City Secretary, council voted unanimously to move into executive session at 8:34 p.m. Okay, those in attendance, you can wait outside and you can come back in to find out if we have any action. Those online, you can do the same.
Hey, John.
Good night.
Going?
Bye, Kevin. Thank you for
Yeah.
coming. Yes, thank you.
Yes, why can you?
Mr. Gad, can you join the breakout room?
Yes, I did push it and I'm,
Okay, 1 second.
thank you.
Okay, what was that?
No, I said I did touch to go into the breakout room, but it hasn't changed me over. It's, I've got the seal of the city
Okay,
and, then down below, my video, the seal of the city.
well, how about I give you a call? Is that okay?
Okay, that'd be great.
What's your phone number?
It's
So you know I have
915.
it.
Okay, you got it? Okay. So I'll just be on phone?
Yes.
Okay, that's fine. That works
Okay,
great.
thank you.
Chris Gadd.
We remember, it's-
Okay,
Into open session,
I'm going to go back and help.
good.
second. Okay, any discussion? Let's vote. Second to open session.
Aye.
Councilmember Stump. Aye. Secretary.
Back on.
We approve to move back into open session at 8:47 PM.
There, I move to take no action for executive session.
Any discussion? Okay, let's vote. Do we take no action?
Aye.
Okay, city secretary, council voted unanimously. There is no action after executive session. And with that, we are going to adjourn at 8:47. Yes.
Yeah, yeah.
Have a good evening, all. Thank y'all.
Yeah.
Have-
Have a good evening.
Thank you. I'll try to do my best. See y'all in a couple
Everybody.
weeks.